Welcome to the first episode of Tea Time with Alice Falling. I'm Alice Falling, and today I get the pleasure of interviewing Amanda Lofstrom, a social worker, Canadian social worker that is based in Saskatchewan. And she can offer some insight into responding to and preventing childhood sexual abuse, CSA. Thank you for having me, Amanda.
Oh, I'm so excited. Thank you for having me as well, Alice.
Yeah, for sure. So, can you tell me a little bit about your social work career, how long you've been doing it, what brought you to the profession?
Absolutely. I kind of fell into social work, to be honest. I thought initially I was going to be a child psychologist. I really liked working with kids, and then I was going to be a lawyer, but law school just didn't want me, so I decided to take social work until I could figure out my next steps. And when I got into social work, I completely fell in love with it. I loved that I got to work with kids. I loved the advocacy of it. And it was the right role for me at that time and it
Hmm.
continues to be. So through my career paths, I actually took a summer student position with the Ministry of Social Services based out of Prince
Mhm.
Albert. And through that, I got into the child protection realm for about 10 years. And that's
Wow.
how I got very interested in CSA. I was seconded to the Prince Albert Police Station to work alongside the Prince Albert Police Service, as well as the RCMP for the Prince Albert jurisdiction area. And it was through that I got a firsthand experience of having to unfortunately disclose the information to loved ones, to family, that their child had been impacted by this. Um, and then from that, after 10 years in that role of various roles throughout social services, I decided I wanted to go back to my roots and what I was very passionate about, which was advocacy from a different point of view. And I wanted to get into the counseling. I really enjoyed helping people, and I wanted to do that in a way that I felt would make a difference in people's lives in a more positive way. And also for my own self-care, I needed to step back from the tough stuff that those social workers at social services do. So that brought me to trauma counseling and working directly with those impacted by sexual violence. And here we are today. So I do that as well as parenting capacity assessments independently. So I still get to work alongside the child protection aspect as well. So yes,
Hey,
that's
can
that's
you
a little bit about
elaborate on
me.
that?
Pardon me?
Well, thank you. Can you elaborate a little bit on that you do on the side?
Yeah, so those are contracted by social services predominantly, as well as the First Nations Child and Family Agencies can do them as well. And the purpose of those is to help caseworkers understand what a parent may be struggling with, if they meet the threshold of good enough to parent their child, and if not, what can be done to enhance the parent's skill, and if not, how can we still ensure that the parent remains in the child's life. So it's not a risk assessment tool. It just helps the social services caseworkers guide case planning and get a better understanding of the parents. So I do those across the province. I love them because I get to really get to know the clients, get in there with the family, watch how they interact with their children, talk to all kinds of people that are supporting the family, and then help the social services make more informed decisions about what parents are struggling with and also what their strengths are as a parent.
Okay, thank you. Um, so what can you say about who to report to if you suspect CSA?
So my biggest thing that I always go with is always report something, even if you don't think it's a big deal or if you don't have all of the information. How I look at it is you might be holding either the first, the middle, or the last piece of a puzzle in a situation. So it's good to report it because it's not your job as the person reporting to make the decision whether or not social services or the other authorities are going to investigate. You're simply providing the information. And with providing that information, you might be helping a child or a youth with something that they're not able to vocalize on their own. So I always encourage to call social services, just report, or the city police or RCMP, depending on your area, as well as if you live on a First Nation, then to call your First Nations Child and Family Agency. Give them whatever details you can. You've done your due diligence, and the rest is up to the authorities. And importantly, too, it kind of eases your heart in the sense that you know you have done what you can in the moment to try and protect somebody.
Definitely. Can you say anything about duty to report?
Yes, so duty to report. Everybody in Saskatchewan is mandated to report. So whether you work in an environment such as myself doing therapy or assessments, it's also the community members. So you could be a teacher, you could just be a grandparent, any single person in Saskatchewan has a duty to report any suspected child abuse or neglect. So um, the ministry has changed a little bit in the sense that you can now report under the age of 17 and under, whereas in the past it was 15 and under, any suspicion. So it might be that little people are consistently coming to school without food. Somebody might say like little Johnny has a black eye and we don't know how they received it. And from just having a conversation with them, there is concerns
Mhm.
at home. They may come home or come to their soccer coach or to grandma and grandpa and just say that like mom and dad are fighting all the time and I don't feel safe. Or it could be something in the middle of the night, and then our mobile crisis units or something of that matter, they can also be reported to for duty to report, and they can attend as well after the hours of 9 to 5 or 8 to 5.
Gotcha, gotcha.
I'll add one more thing on that. People can
Yeah,
report
sure.
and leave their name, or they can report anonymously because they know,
Mhm.
like living in small communities, there is a lot of risk of backlash of people reporting. The ministry is mandated to keep it confidential, who is reporting. But if you live in a small town community, there is that risk that they're just going to figure it out. So people can either deny that they made the call because that is within their right, or they can report it anonymously. So, for example, if I'm calling and I don't want my name, I would just simply say, I would just like to report this information anonymously, give the information, and then it goes through the channels behind the scenes with social services without the person knowing who made the call. So there is lots of different options to report in that capacity.
That's really good to hear. Really good to hear.
Yeah.
Um, so does every CSA case require a sexual assault kit? Many people refer to it as a rape kit.
Yeah.
And how do you support the child and their family through that?
Absolutely. Those are tough cases. So you're correct in that it's historically been called a rape kit, especially in the USA, which is what they still call it. Here in Canada, we call them sexual assault kits. So no, not every case involves a kit. In the past, it used to be that within 72 hours of a sexual assault occurring, the kit would need to be completed. But like everything with science and technology forever evolving, they have now been able to do up to 7 days. So if a sexual assault occurred today, 1 week from today, they can still have the kit done. That even means if they have showered, if they have washed their clothing, they still have ways of obtaining DNA. It's not perfect all the time, but it's still a huge step in the right direction.
Hmm.
So if we know that a little person has disclosed sexual assault and it's within that 7 day window, we encourage, first of all, that they get medical attention. So there is a component of there's two components to the kit. There's medical and there's forensic. So the medical side of thing is just to make sure that if there's any injuries, lacerations, bruises, that those are attended to first and foremost, as well as if there's a risk of sexually transmitted illnesses, so STIs, or bloodborne illnesses, so the BBIs, that those are also properly treated for. Depending on the child's age, if they are at age of having their menstruation, they can also obtain Plan B or something of that nature to potentially prevent a pregnancy. And I'm not versed enough on the Plan B to explain the timeframes around that, but those are things that the nursing staff, which is called a SANE nurse, usually will do. They're the sexual nurse exam, sexual assault nurse examiners. They go through all of this very, very well with the parent, guardian, or and the child. So then the second component is the forensic kit. What that encompasses is it depends on where the assault occurred within the body. So if there's like a bite mark on their cheek, they might swab the cheek. If there was kissing involved, then they might swab the mouth. If there was vaginal penetration or anal penetration, they may swab those areas as well. But every step along the way, those that are completing the kit, I will say in my experiences, are phenomenal at asking consent and explaining what they're doing because somebody might not want to be swabbed. They may only want underneath their fingers cleaned, or they may only want some pieces of their hair gone through. So even if we did have penetration of some sort, that person who's been victimized may say, nope, I do not want that swabbed. And the nurse examiner or the pediatrician, whomever is doing the kit, is very good about abiding by their wishes. So definitely not everyone has a kit involved. If they're under the age of 12, we generally wait for a pediatrician that is trained to do those because they are a little bit higher, just different things with them being so young. Sometimes the child does have to be put under anesthetic, so that's also taken in consideration. And the parent or the guardian, or in some cases, a social worker, is there every step of the way, depending on what the child wants, and also consenting to everything as well.
That's really good.
It's a tough process, so they do a great, in my experience, they do a really great job of going through everything. Of course, there's always horror stories, but I've very luckily not been a part of any of those horror stories in my professional career.
Yeah. How exactly do social workers and police work together? Like, who decides if a child is ready to testify for court? Like,
Mhm.
and are the police like, are they part of the interviewing process? Like, how does that all work?
Yeah, so even before it gets to the court process, because of course not everything is always going to go to court, right? So the police and social services, according to policy, they work very closely together. So if it is looking at criminal charges, then yes, the police are doing their interviews. Sometimes if the social services or the First Nations Child and Family Service agencies have their forensic interviewing, they can do the interview first and then provide that information to the police service. And then they will make the final determination if the child is being re-interviewed or if they're using the initial interview from the social worker. That's how it worked when I was there, but keep in mind this was several years ago, so things have changed a little bit. But the police oftentimes will interview the children in plain clothes. They will build rapport with the child. The parent or guardian, it kind of depends on the police service and the situation, may or may not be in the room with the child. A lot of the times I find that parent or guardian will wait in a waiting area while the police officer takes the child. It's all on video, and they just spend time building rapport until the child is
Mhm.
comfortable to talk. When I've taken children, that's how it goes with myself. If they're a little bit older, say they're teenagers, sometimes then I will sit in the room with the child, but like we are not to say anything, right? It's the police's interview. We're just there as an emotional support for the child. Then, regarding whether or not the child is ready to testify in court, if it does get to that point, it's really a joint effort. If it involves a social worker, it might not always involve a social worker though. It might involve a counselor such as myself. So I will work with the child to get them to the point where they feel like they have some power and control back in their lives, where they found their voice again. Really working on that self-empowerment piece is what I do. If parents or guardian are involved, they're just being parent or guardian and they're just supporting that person and advocating for what they think is best as well. Then we work very closely with the prosecutor. who will run the trial, and an agency that I have a huge amount of respect for called Victim Witness. And their role is to prepare the child for court. So oftentimes I will go with the child as their support person, being their therapist. And we will go meet with victim witness. They will go over the video or disclosure interview with the child and myself, or mom or dad or parent guardian. They will also go through possible questions that will be asked. And at other times, we've taken the child for tours of the courtroom so that they know what to expect, because court is terrifying. It is not what you see on Law and Order, though. We do not have people yelling and screaming at each other. So it's kind of, that's how they work together to make sure that the child is ready. We don't always have the luxury of saying, you know what, this person is just not ready to testify yet. Because at the end of the day, the justice system still has a time frame that they need to abide by. So everyone kind of works together to try to get the child or youth as ready as possible. And then we also will do things such as the child or youth can testify from what's called a soft room. So in the perfect situation, it is a room in a courthouse that is equipped with a large screen TV. It's cut into 3 quadrants, sometimes 4 quadrants, with the judge, the defendant, the defense lawyer, and the prosecutor. So that's what the child sees. And then they're on video, and they just have to respond to the questions being asked of them from the comfort of a different room and a support person sitting by them. That support person is approved through the courts. It could be myself as their therapist. It could be a loved one. But one thing I always explain to people before they make the determination if they're the support person is, how are you going to respond when that little person is potentially breaking down beside you and you can't reach out to touch them? As a mom myself, it would be a really difficult thing. So I would prefer to take that on for any parent or guardian, because the direction is we are to be statues. We cannot be caressing the child's arm or rubbing their back. We can't be breathing too deeply so that we're not communicating with the child, because it has to be a fair process. And that can be really difficult for people. But just having another human there that the child knows and trusts makes a huge difference for them when they're testifying. In other cases, if we go a little bit further north in Saskatchewan, we don't have the luxury of a soft room, just because sometimes they're held in their town halls or the band offices. So then in those cases, we'll use a screen. So it's a black screen that kind of goes, if you remember, like back in the day when we did science fairs and we had those cardboard cutouts, that's
Hmm.
what they put around the child or the youth so that you cannot see the defendant. And then again, they can also have a support person sitting up in the witness box with the child. So these are all things that are taken into account and consideration so that even if the child isn't emotionally ready and the justice system still says we're going ahead, we've got these other things in place to hopefully help the child get through it.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's really good. Um, so in terms of counseling, if the parent or guardian has been cleared, do you meet with them first? Like how does that go? Like how does the counseling start?
Yeah, no, that's such a great question, because that's sometimes things that are scary for parents or guardians to come into, is entrusting your child with a complete stranger. So I can speak on my own personal how I work. Is I will contact the parent and have a phone call with them or guardian, whoever is looking after the little person, and
Hmm.
I go through an intake. I want to get to know the child from the eyes of whoever's looking after them without the child being in the room, so that this child isn't hearing like how many things they're struggling with and what they're not good at. And then also, though, I do focus on like what are the strengths. Um, they can either do that on the phone with me, or I can email them a Microsoft document and they fill it out for me, whichever they prefer. The next step that I do is I bring the parent and child in for what I call an intake appointment. And that is strictly so that they get to choose me. Just because I've taken their file doesn't mean I'm the right therapist for them because a lot of it in therapy is relation. So I invite them in. I love my space. I'm not in my space today, but I have a doll house and I've got games and arts and crafts and sand trays. And I just have the child or youth kind of pick out a few things they want to do. Usually, if they're younger, they play with my doll house or the pirate ship. If they're older, they usually either select play with my sand tray or they'll just doodle on one of my sketch pads. And then we have a very basic getting to know you, like tell me about your favorite subject in school. What's your favorite color? What grade are you in? Like very, very surface level questions. I try to get to know about their likes and dislikes. I always give them the right to decide if they want to tell me if they know why they're in my office or if they think they have something to work on. I'll give the parent or caregiver an option to very calmly and in a very positive way tell me why the child is there again, just so the child can hear it themselves. And then after, it kind of depends. Sometimes the parent never leaves the first session. Other times, I kind of tell that the child is 100% comfortable, and we will show the parent where they can wait in my waiting area. And then I will have a more of about a half an hour is what I prefer conversation with just the child. And that is still just getting to know me and getting to know them. We'll play games like Jenga or Snakes and Ladders. Um, a lot of the times they take the opportunity to teach me about their favorite thing that they do at home that I'm learning about because I don't know a lot of the kids these days what they do. So that's how I work it is just so they then choose me at the end of the session. I bring the parent or guardian back in. And I tell them you can either book again now, or what I would recommend is you go home and talk to your little person about what they thought. Do they like Amanda? Do they want to work with me? Do they feel comfortable with me? And if they say yes, let's book another one. If they say no, I'm happy to find somebody else that they have a better connection with. So that's how I work.
All right. Is there any confidentiality with children, especially in regards to older youth?
Yes. So if they are 15 and under, I do need consent from a parent or guardian to work with their child. Everything still remains confidential with the child, but I do have more contact with the parent in those instances, just because I need things to change at home for a lot of the times in order for
Mhm.
that child to reach their therapeutic goals. So I won't tell the parent or guardian what I'm talking about with their child, but we might say, you know what, we're working on self-esteem, we're working on healthy boundaries. We did talk about the actual sexual assault today, so maybe watch for some extra triggers or give them some extra love and attention tonight. If the child says, nope, you can tell everything to my mom or dad about what I talked to you about today, then I might do that. But it's strictly case by case and session to session dependent. When they hit the age of 16, however, they have complete confidentiality, just like you or I as adults. So 16 and older, I do not require adult consent to work with them. I always encourage that they have the conversation with their parent or guardian, like I'm working with Amanda right now, just in case anything comes up. A lot of them do choose to share that with their parent or guardian that they're working with me. And then again, if I say, you know what, you're not safe today, or I need to talk to your parent or guardian about that, I have that conversation with them before contacting their parent or guardian so that I'm being respectful of their confidentiality in an ethical way.
All right. Um, so how do you teach boundaries to very small children?
Yeah, so boundaries is a little bit different depending on the child and where they're at. So I'll give you just a couple of examples if that's okay.
Okay.
So
Mm.
I work from a somatic experiencing approach, which is working with the nervous system and working to recognize signs within our bodies before sometimes our minds can. The other approach I work from is a play therapy approach. So when I'm talking about little people. So when I do an SE approach for boundaries, I like to use visuals with kids. So I have a big rope in my office and we kind of do it like a bubble. So we'll have a huge bubble around them and then I walk closer and closer as they start to feel these like tingly sensations rising in their body. And then they're like, you're getting too close. And then their body tells me to stop. So they may raise
Okay.
their hands. Then, when they have that acknowledgement within their body that, hey, this is my physical boundary, that opens up a larger conversation about why boundaries are important, what to do if boundaries are being crossed, how to say no either verbally or with your body, anything at all within boundaries. That's usually my first way in to open the door to safely talking about boundaries. And then I do a very similar thing in play therapy, either using a sand tray. And again, we'll kind of I have fences. So we'll have a little person that they choose to represent themselves in the fence. And then we have other people, and then they tell me who the characters are in the sand tray. And we walk them physically closer and closer until the child starts to recognize that, again, they're getting too close. So it's very similar activities, but done in different ways. And I incorporate the somatic experiencing in both dynamics because that's where my training lies.
Nice. Is there an age cutoff for therapy? Like, how young of children have you worked with?
So the youngest I've ever worked with is 3. And the my motto is kind of as long as they can speak or communicate in some fashion, I can work with them. And I don't say that to be egotistical. I say that because I feel like everyone would benefit from some sort of therapeutic intervention. If they're very young, though, the purpose of me working with them is not to correct all their behaviors. It's so that I can see what is going on a lot through the play aspect and then educate whoever is looking after them. So I may
Okay.
only have 2 sessions with the 3-year-old, 4-year-old, and then the rest will be with the parent or guardian, helping them implement strategies at home, helping them identify regulating, because realistically, 2, 3, 4 hours in a month with me is not going to change hugely unless we see behaviors being identified at home and worked on as well.
Hmm,
So as long as they can talk and we have somebody on board to support them, I'm willing and ready to try.
nice. The effects of CSA can be lifelong.
Yes.
And so, how important is it to have early intervention when it comes to working with young children?
In the perfect world, it would be immediate. Unfortunately, we don't always live in a perfect world. Perfection doesn't really exist. So, as soon as the child is ready, sometimes the child is just not ready or the youth is not ready until years down the road. And then they recognize that, you know what, this was bothering me. So I don't think that there is like a perfect age or perfect week or day after the event. It's it's an internal decision that needs to occur. Even if I've had some people that are checking all the boxes and I go up to the hospital and I'm present with them for the kit, and then they come and see me for 2 weeks in a row, and then they're just like, you know what, Amanda, I'm okay. I don't need you right now. And I say, that's fine. Please know that whenever life circumstances change or you hit different milestones, you might not be okay and come back and see me at that time. And that's okay.
Hmm.
So, do I have 110 perfect answer for those questions? No, but I always say just even if the parent or guardian gets support for themselves, that might
Hmm.
be enough for the child as well. Because if we have somebody who's taking care of themselves and understanding what to watch for different symptoms in the future, how to handle it, the child may never or may not require therapy for a long time, if ever, because they have such a supportive wraparound system at home or in their personal lives.
Gotcha. Are there certain aims of therapy that you strive for when working with young children?
Yes. The biggest one is just to regain that feeling of power and control for them, to recognize that what occurred to them was not their fault, and for them to feel like they have a voice. So, plain and simple, those are always, no matter what situation I'm really working with,
Mm-hmm.
it is that to make them feel good about themselves again, no matter how that looks, because every person is going to feel differently, in a good in a different way.
Mm-hmm. So should family members of the victim, should they receive therapy to deal with their own thoughts and emotions and
Absolutely. If somebody is struggling with vicarious trauma, so when a loved one they know has been impacted by sexual violence or any trauma for that matter, and they're struggling, absolutely. If you feel that you need professional support, that is something that therapists are equipped to help with. And if they're not, then they'll most likely refer you to somebody who is. I know for myself, if hopefully this never occurs to me, but if I did have something happen to one of my children, I would 100% require therapy myself to work through it. And just being validated, like, this is big stuff, this is tough stuff, like, you're still a good mom, and helping me understand my rolling emotions would be extremely helpful. From what I see too, I've had, I'll use an example of spouses that their spouse has been assaulted in the past and it just became knowledge to them. I might only see them once or twice, but it's just to validate that they are doing what they can as a supportive spouse. Um, Other times it's been mom has reached out to me because their child recently disclosed a sexual assault. And again, it might not be long term. It might be a very short term involvement that they just need a little bit extra support to work through it. Or it's a really long term involvement because this completely flipped their family upside down. It could have been a family member that was offending against their child. So now we've got layers upon layers of distrust that is now occurring. So the sooner people can recognize, hey, I need some extra help, the better off that hopefully they will be.
for sure? So in terms of prevention, can you tell me what you cover in presentations in schools that you've done?
Yeah, we've been so lucky. A coworker and I have been welcomed back into the schools as well as the rest of our team. So we've been presenting to the high schools, specifically in Prince Albert so far, and we're actually heading up to Stanley Mission here very soon. What have been presenting on is consent first and foremost, most. So it's just for students grade 7 and up is what we've been asked to present to so that they understand what consent is. A lot of the times these kids don't realize that they're actually asking for consent on a daily basis. Like we use the example that you wouldn't just walk up to somebody and take their phone and start making phone calls. You would ask if you can borrow their phone. So therefore, it's the exact same thing when you're asking for sexual consent. So we'll use examples and analogies to kind of get to the kids on their levels. We also have found the internet has really taken off, as we all know, especially after the pandemic in 2020. A lot of kids were online, and online has become the new playground for predators, unfortunately. So we were told as children, and I'm going to say you and I because we're very close in age, but
Hmm.
we were told as children to not talk to strangers on the playground. But now the same goes for online. So we do a lot of education about how to keep yourself safe on the internet. Um, that it's a myth that once you send a picture that might be of your genitalia, it's on the internet. It's not just doesn't disappear. People can get things back off of Snapchat. How our algorithms are constantly feeding into us. So we're focusing on that heavily right now, as well as we've noticed a trend in unhealthy relationships within our teenagers, getting into some interpersonal violence at this young age. So we do a lot of showing them what a healthy relationship looks like versus an unhealthy relationship and educating them on dating violence. We've also had the privilege of talking to parents of elementary school students about internet safety because realistically, my kids, they know more about the internet than I do. I rely on my 17-year-old nieces to teach me about the internet and Snapchat, or my 15-year-old niece to explain different apps to me because I don't know. So our point of those presentations is we don't need to be the expert on these apps, but we do need to have an understanding and parental controls in place so that we can help protect our children because their little brains aren't fully developed and they don't have the impulse control or the understanding of right versus wrong like we do as adults. So those are the primary things so far that we've been welcomed back into the education system to talk about, which is very exciting
That is
our
very
office.
exciting.
Yes, every time we get a phone call from a school, we're just like, when can we do it, you guys? This is priority.
Yeah,
Um, I might be opening the floodgates here, but we have yet to say no to a school because we are very, very passionate about teaching our younger generations about consent and the realities of sexual assault.
gotcha, gotcha. Um, so do you talk about child exploitation at all in your
We
presentation?
have, yeah. When we went up to one of the First Nations in the north, they asked us specifically to talk about human trafficking. So in that instance, we did. We haven't talked about it within our public school systems at this time, simply because they just haven't asked. So we don't want to push the limits ourselves. But when we do other presentations to say community members and adults, one of my coworkers, Amy Acorn, was invited to talk at a human trafficking coalition conference in Melfort approximately a year ago. And our team is also a part of oh gosh, I might get this wrong, but it's the Paul Brandt Initiative, not in my city. So with that knowledge, we have had the opportunity to teach others about human trafficking. We loved when we were able to teach the students about it, especially from the north, because they don't sometimes recognize that people are coming into the north that they already know and trust, or they will buy them gifts and take them on holidays to say Saskatoon, and now we've got them hooked. So it's really important that we can get out there and educate about red flags to watch for so that our next generation can understand that this does happen in Saskatchewan on a, a higher basis than we would like to admit sometimes.
Definitely.
Hmm.
And do you know how many school divisions in Saskatchewan are doing these presentations? Or is
I'm not sure. I know right now the Saskatchewan Rivers Public School Division has been very good about letting us back in, and I shouldn't say letting us back in. They've welcomed us in as long as they're 15 and under. The parents are providing consent for their child to attend our presentations. If they're 16 and older, because of the age of consent, it's not required, but the schools have been doing a fantastic job about communicating to their students and their families about why we're coming back in. I can't speak to what's going on in the rest of the province. I would hope that we're on the right path where this can start up again, though, because I just think it's so very needed and important to educate from people who work within the industry, for lack of a
yes.
better way to explain it, because unfortunately, this is what we do every day. So
Mhm.
the teachers have a huge job ahead of them with teaching everything else. It's wonderful when they can bring in agencies such as ourselves to educate on the sexual violence components for them.
Do you have any other suggestions on how to do prevention work?
Um,
Like, do you see any gaps in the system?
yeah, I would love to be able to start in daycares, actually. I'm a big, big believer in teaching children the proper names of their genitals. So it was kind of a funny thing, but also it was a part of my world that when my children were small, My little one is quite the little spitfire, and she would have no issues at daycare saying, I didn't wipe my vagina very good. And it sounds so odd coming from such a little person, but we never want to question what body part they're talking about. As a person who used to do investigations, I've heard every name you can think of to refer to genitals. And sometimes, unfortunately, these children are disregarded and they're actually speaking out, but you don't know when you say, Johnny keeps asking me if I want a popsicle. You don't know that they're talking actually about a penis. So that's why
Yeah.
it's so important that we teach kids the proper anatomy, um, that we're not forcing children to hug great Aunt Sally that they've never met in their life, or go sit on cousin Billy's lap. Giving children the autonomy to say, no, I don't want to give them a hug, but I'll give you a high five or a fist pump. Not forcing children to give somebody a kiss. All of those things are the start of prevention. And I think that those are so incredibly important. Teaching them like my body safety rules. People can easily Google that. And there's like a lovely little roadmap on my body safety rules, or I am the boss of my body. Those kinds of things, when they're quite small and they're learning, these kids are sponges and they pick up stuff really quickly. As long as teaching your children that if you're being told to keep a secret, that they need to come to a trusted adult and tell them that secret. That's always been a rule in my house. No matter how big the secret is, I need you to tell mom or dad about it so we can help you. Now that my kids are older, it still stays the same, especially like they're not allowed on Snapchat or Roblox. And even if I tell them if you do break a rule, yeah, you're gonna get grounded. But I would rather you deal with me and have to suffer the consequences at home than have it live on the internet for a lifetime. So always encouraging open communication with your child. We don't live in a world all the time where our children feel safe talking to our parents or guardians. So then it becomes the role of other helpers in their lives to make sure that children have an outlet. So it might be an aunt or an uncle that's checking in on the kids and being that source of support. It might be a mentor at the school or a teacher, a hockey coach, just somebody that is checking on the kids. And once in a while, just like, hey, how are things going? Noticing difference in their behaviors and kind of asking them about it. Those are all just ways to keep making sure that our kids have a source of support, and goes a long way with the prevention aspect, because then they do have an outlet and they do have a voice that they can reach out to. So long story short, perfect world, start from day as soon as they're able to start talking. And then having people providing that education within the school system would be fantastic moving forward.
The safe touch, safe secrets.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today and for the very important work that you do. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And if you would like more information on possible signs of CSA, how to handle disclosures, and speak with your children about boundaries, I highly recommend Canadian Centre for Child Protection, Inc., website protectchildren.ca. And you can also check out my educational and short film videos I created on YouTube and TikTok.
Thank you so much for having me, Alice. I really hope that I could shed some light somehow on this as well, because I agree this
You
is so
definitely
important.
did.
And I see great things for you. So I'm very excited to be a small part of your journey. So thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Welcome.